So we're getting a perspective on the geologic timetable. An author, Schindewolf, comments on some stratigraphic terms. In other words, the geologic and fossiliferous formations in real life hardly ever conform to the falsely fabricated geologic timetable of the evolutionists that appears in so many textbooks. So they resort instead to arbitrary and false assignments of specific ages to specific fossils without any proof, never considering the possibility that all life forms were created in the beginning, especially since they seem to be quite interdependent. And when you ask them, they'll say the fossil is as old as the rocks they're embedded in. Or they'll say the rocks are as old as the fossils that are contained therein. The basis for the apparent great strength of the present system of the so-called historical geology is here clearly seen. Provision is made ahead of time for any contrary evidence that might be discovered in the field. The geologic time sequence has been built up primarily on the tacit assumption of organic evolution, which theory in turn derives its chief support from the geologic sequence thus presented as actual, but not real, historical evidence of the process. I like the word there, but not real, historical evidence of the process. Fragments of the sequences thus built up often appear legitimately superposed in a given exposure, but there are never more than a very few formations exposed at any one locality. So you don't know the whole thing, you haven't investigated the whole thing, occupying only a small portion of the geologic column. Formations from different localities are integrated into a continuous sequence almost entirely by means of the principle, the falsely stated principles of organic evolution. We're going by textbooks. Anything doesn't agree, we have an excuse for it. Other than that, we select a little bit here, a little bit there to support what the textbooks say, never really truly proving out the textbooks as accurate. And when, as frequently occurs, strata are found superposed, but with the fossils in the inverse order, this paradox is resolved by saying that the strata must have been inverted through faulting or folding. But of course, that requires a lot of rubble and violent evidence of violent movements, whether or not there is any physical evidence thereof. When superposed strata are found with intervening systems missing, this is explained, where are the fossils? By the assumption of a corresponding period of erosion rather than deposition. It just went away. The claim is merely made by evolutionists that it is possible to interpret geology in terms of slow processes acting over long periods. Note that it is necessary to do so. Not that it is necessary to do so. It could be catastrophic and sudden. One may in fact read it well at length in Lyell and in words of the other earlier uniformitarian geologists without finding more than essentially this claim. Uniformitarianism, that which is always the process that's observed today, has always been that way. Not proved, it's just supposed. In other words, has been all simply been assumed and not proved. Catastrophism has simply been denied and not refuted, ignored. But as a matter of fact, it is not even true that uniformity is a possible explanation for most of the Earth's geologic formations, as any candid examiner of the facts ought to reveal. The presupposed geologic timetable presumed main divisions and events of geological time. So we have your eras, Cenozoic and your periods. The rise of minor plants and animals in man, so many years ago. This is textbook. Tertiary, rise of mammals and developments of highest plants. We have all these many, many million years ago. Then the Cretaceous, with modernized angiosperms and insects abundant, foraminifers and profuse, extinction of dinosaurs, flying reptiles, and ammonites. Then we have the Jurassic, first reptilian birds, first of highest forms of insects, first primitive angiosperms. 70 to 200 million years. All arbitrary. They have to be here in the right rocks, and if they aren't, well, something changed it or it went away. Triassic, earliest dinosaurs, flying reptiles, marine reptiles, and primitive mammals. Cycads and conifers common, modern corals common, earliest ammonites, and so on. This is all arbitrary. That's what's in the textbooks. You got Paleozoic era, we have Permian, Pennsylvanian, and Mississippian. They put these names in here. The estimated years ago of all this is 200 to 500, half a billion years. And so on. Here are the textbook charts. So, let's move on to the next page. The charts aren't actually proved consistently in reality. There always seems to be some discrepancy that doesn't fit the chart. So, there we go.